Previously, we saw the boy who would become a chapter master, facing the brutal trials of Thulium Minor and the darkness that shaped his destiny. Now his legend continues. From the halls of Macragge to the battlefields of the Imperium, Marneus Calgar's story is one of war, sacrifice, and unyielding resolve. Join me as we continue this journey into the lore of Warhammer 40,000, where even heroes must bleed to survive. Nova Thulium, a world once rich with faith and purpose, now drowned in blood. The battlefield lies silent, a graveyard of the Emperor's servants and the damned alike. Smoke chokes the air, the stench of oil and death hangs heavy. Among the fallen, the survivors pick through the wreckage, searching for life where none should remain. Then a stir, a sound, flesh that should not move, armor that should not rise.
It lives, the heretic.
But in the Imperium, mercy is not granted to those who defy the Emperor. The roar of a bolter cuts through the silence, a single righteous thunder. The heretic's final breath is burned away in holy fire. On Nova Thulium, death is mercy, and mercy is rare. The battlefield lies still, but only for a moment. Through the smoke, a towering figure emerges, ceramite blue, trimmed in gold, marked by the sigil of Ultramar. Marneus Calgar, Lord of Macragge. His presence alone commands silence. Every step is measured, every word, judgment.
Heretics do not find their way to the heart of Ultramar by chance,
he declares.
They came from somewhere. We will find the source and burn it out.
The flames reflect in his bionic eye, cold, calculating.
The Calgar estates are nearby,
he decides.
That's where this ends, or begins.
Deep beneath the surface of Thulium Minor, corruption festers. The air hums with the static of forbidden rituals, the Black Legion at work. Once warriors of the War Master, now heralds of damnation, they twist the Mechanicus priest to their will.
Listen closely, gear chatterer.
The traitor growls, his words heavy with mockery.
Convince your masters all is well, and you may yet live.
The tech priest's voice shakes, synthetic and trembling. Every word of false praise to the Omnissiah is a prayer for survival. The Black Legion watches, silent, predatory. Their leader's tone cuts through the cavern like a chain blade.
Do better,
he warns.
One way or another, your metal art will serve our Lord.
The priest obeys, his trembling hands sending the coded lie into the void. Around him, the cavern breathes with dark machinery, heretical runes pulsing faintly, a heartbeat of chaos within the realm of Ultramar. The transmission ends.
Sufficient?
One warrior asks. The reply comes cold and certain.
Good.
The cavern trembles with laughter, cruel, guttural, and wet with madness. The tech priest's body cools in a pool of his own blood, his usefulness ended in an instant.
We could have still used him.
One voice growls.
Perhaps.
Another replies.
But the blood god waits for no one.
Among the traitors of the Black Legion, faith is a contest of brutality. Devotion measured in screams, not sermons. Their leader steps forward, a figure marked by ruin and authority. His voice carries the promise of war.
Find another way to send our lies,
he commands.
Let the false Imperium choke on its own certainty.
Around him, the warriors answer in unholy chorus.
Brothers of war, begin the next wave. Let the dupes of the false Emperor be torn apart.
The chant rises, echoing through the tunnels, a hymn to chaos itself. And at the center of it all, the warlord's gaze burns like a dying sun.
Your long war's end approaches.
In the shadows, the gods stir. The next strike against Ultramar is already in motion. The fortress of House Calgar, proud, ancient, and carved into the heart of Macragge's mountains. Once, this was merely home. Now it stands as a monument to the boy who became a legend. Lord Marneus Calgar returns, not as the son of the estate, but as its savior. The walls that once towered over him now seem small beneath the shadow of his armor. Beside him, the adepts of the Mechanicus whisper their static prayers, processing, recording, analyzing the life of a man who has transcended mortality. Calgar's voice carries the weight of memory.
I have not looked upon these halls since my training for the Astartes' tests,
He says. The tech priest hums with curiosity.
Is creating a Marneus a repeatable event?
A spark of humor flickers behind the Lord's cold, cybernetic eye.
What makes a man?
He repeats.
Discipline, pain, purpose. I learned it first from my trainer, Crixus. Up on the moon.
His gaze drifts upward, remembering the night he was hunted through darkness by an amble. Not as a hero, but as a boy determined to survive. The legend of Calgar was not born in battle. It was forged in the fear of that first chase. On the moon above Macragge, a young Marneus learned the meaning of survival. Crixus, his first instructor, believed that pain was the truest teacher. His lessons were simple and brutal.
The first lesson is vigilance. The amble waits for no one.
The boys had run for their lives through tunnels filled with predators and darkness. Some fell, others learned to keep running. Calgar survived, barely, not through strength alone, but through instinct, courage, and will, and when they finally staggered into the light, the second lesson began.
A warrior learns how to endure.
Crixus growled, cauterizing wounds with the fire of his pistol. For Marneus, that was the start of it. There was no end. Every scar, every trial would forge the Lord of Macragge to come.
Close combat, blades, fists, and blood. That was our education. Crixus taught us that a warrior's weapon isn't what he holds, it's what he becomes. When blades broke, we fought with stones. When stones shattered, we used our hands. We learned to strike, to endure, to adapt. The pain was constant, but so was the purpose. Each bruise, each cut, a step closer to becoming something greater. Nights were colder than death. One of us would sleep, the other would watch, knowing the next night we'd trade places. Some came to join us, survivors from other trials. Ones and twos at first. Ones and twos who lived, and ones and twos who didn't. But those who remained, they grew strong. And together, in the darkness of that moon, we learned what it truly meant. To endure. Discipline was beaten into us, not through cruelty, but through necessity. Every failure meant another trial, another chance to prove we were worthy, or to die trying. Even among brothers, rivalry festered. Pride, jealousy, these were our first enemies. I learned quickly that strength wasn't just in the arm or the blade. It was in the will to endure. Each insult, each challenge, each breath drawn through pain, all of it was a forge. And the forge does not care who survives the flame, only what is made from it. We were bloodied, exhausted, hunted. The trials were meant to break us, and they nearly did. But in the end, it wasn't strength of arm or speed that saw us through. It was loyalty. Tacticus could have left me. Any rational warrior would have. But a true warrior does not abandon his brother. Not when the Emperor's light still burns within. That night, amidst the corpses of beasts and boys alike, I learned what it truly meant to endure together. We did not survive because we were the strongest. We survived because we refused to stand alone. We thought rivalry would make us stronger, that testing ourselves against Severin and Cato would sharpen our edge. But what began as competition soon turned to something darker. Their strength came from cruelty, from pride. They trained not to become better, but to dominate. I remember looking into their eyes and realizing they weren't boys anymore. They were predators. We were still clinging to honor, to brotherhood, while they'd already surrendered theirs. And before we knew the truth, Before the angels of death came to claim their chosen, we believed we still had time to rise above them. That night, we were just children, dreaming of glory. We had no idea how close the darkness already was. There was unity once, until there wasn't. One night, they were simply gone. No warnings, no signs, just empty camps and cold fires. Tracking them was easy. We'd been trained for that. We thought ourselves skilled, disciplined. We didn't question why they'd gone where they had, only that we would follow. They'd entered the tunnels Crixus had forbidden. That was reason enough for us to do the same. We were trained well, or so we believed. We found the traps. We disarmed them. We laughed at how simple it all seemed. But in hindsight, that should have been our first warning. For all our skill, we were still only boys pretending to be warriors, and the tunnels were waiting to remind us of that. We went deeper into the tunnels, chasing shadows and curiosity, and ignoring every warning Crixus had given us. The deeper we went, the more the stone gave way to something unnatural. Corroded metal, rusted walls, and the scent of ancient machinery long dead. Was it an old base, a forgotten relic of the Dark Age, or something far worse, buried for a reason? At first, we had questions, but soon we realized we didn't want the answers. We had been trained to fight, to strike, to endure, to harden our hearts against pain. But nothing could prepare us for what we saw in those tunnels. The bones of men and machines intertwined. The mark of corruption etched into the walls themselves. All our lessons, all our courage, they meant nothing here. We weren't soldiers. We were children staring into the abyss. And as we followed the path deeper into that buried place, we found the truth. And the truth looked back at us. We were not aware of the full curriculum. What we found beneath the surface of Macragge was no training ground. It was a temple, a place of worship, but not to the Emperor. The air stank of blood and madness, symbols of corruption carved into flesh and stone alike. The faithful bowed before something unspeakable, their chants echoing through the caverns like the heartbeat of a dying god. We had come seeking strength. What we found was rot. And in that moment, I understood the true enemy of mankind. Chaos. An abomination against all that we were meant to be. We were children, but the galaxy does not care for youth. The cult's corruption ran deeper than we'd feared. It had touched even those we trusted. Our teacher, our guardian, revealed his true face at last. Strength, he said, was forged through pain, survival through sacrifice. We had trained to fight, but this was slaughter. He wanted to see what we were truly made of, to test if we were worthy of his twisted lesson. And in that darkness, surrounded by death, I learned that mercy has no place in the making of a warrior. That day, the boy I was died. Crixus had shown his true nature. Once, he was our teacher, the man who forged us in discipline and steel. But beneath that armor of duty lay the rot of heresy. Rejected by the Adeptus Astartes, he turned his bitterness into worship. He found purpose not in honor, but in blood. To him, the Emperor was a lie, and Khorne, the only truth. We weren't students anymore, we were sacrifices. Our lives, the final lesson in his descent into madness. But even then, beaten and bound, I swore I would never kneel, for Marines do not beg, and we do not break. Pain teaches in ways words never could. Crixus believed he could break us, that fear and agony would forge his truth into our flesh. but he misunderstood what it means to endure. Perhaps his madness was born from rejection, or perhaps rejection was the price of the madness already festering within him. Either way, it mattered little. His faith was false, his strength borrowed. And when faith and flesh fail, all that remains is will. That day, we learned what it meant to survive, not for glory nor vengeance, but because death would have pleased him too much. Crixus was a monster. That much is undeniable. But monsters are not born. They are made, forged in the fires of failure, tempered by hatred and sharpened by betrayal. His lessons were pain, his faith, madness. And in that final moment, when steel met flesh, I saw the truth of him and of myself. There, on the edge of the abyss, everything he had taught us came to meaning. Not strength, not cruelty, sacrifice. He fell, screaming his god's name, but we fell into silence. The darkness embraced us, cold and silent. We fell far, but not far enough to escape what we'd done. The water was black as the void, and just as merciless. Taciturn pulled me from the depths, but my blood stained the cavern floor like an offering. He thought he could save me. He didn't understand. Some wounds cannot be closed. In that moment, beneath the world that had forged us, I felt the weight of my failure. The Emperor's light was far away, and all I could see was the red glow of my own ending. I believed Marneus Calgar would never rise again. But sometimes, death is only the first lesson. In the depths of that cavern, something within me broke, and something greater was born. Marneus was right. He would never be a space marine. The thought tore through me like a blade. But if fate had decreed his end, then I would bear his name, his courage, his dream. Taciturn would die so that Marneus Calgar could live. He had given his life for me, time and again. Now, I would give mine to preserve his. When I rose from that darkness, I was no longer the boy I once was. The blood on my hands was his, and my own rebirth. Marneus Calgar was dead. Long live Marneus Calgar.
And so, on that blood-soaked cavern floor, one name was buried, and another was born. Taciturn, the boy who fell, would never be remembered. But Marneus Calgar, the hero, the Lord of Macragge, the champion of Ultramar, would live on. A legend forged not from victory, but from loss, and a promise between brothers that death could never break.
The boy named Marneus Calgar died at age 12 in service to the Emperor.
But the name, the legacy, lived on. For it was not the name that mattered, but the will behind it, the courage, the sacrifice. Taciturn took up the mantle, carrying his brother's name into legend, and with it the burden of vengeance. Years later, the Lord of Ultramar stands before that statue, not as the boy who survived, but as the man who remembers. Because in this galaxy, mercy is fleeting, but vengeance is eternal. This was the rise of Marneus Calgar, the boy who became more than a name. In the grim darkness of the far future, heroes are not born. They are forged,